Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, welcoming in Dr. Timothy Jennings, a regular guest on our program, here to talk about his new book, The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Mind. He's been in private practice as a Christian psychiatrist and certified master psychopharmacologist since 1997. Board certified in psychiatry by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology. He has written The God-Shaped Brain, The God-Shaped Heart, and The Aging Brain. He's in a private practice in Chattanooga, Tennessee. You can find more about him and this topic at the Aging, just www.agingbrainbook.com, and his ministry website, comeandreason.com. Dr. Timothy Jennings, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thanks for having me back, Eric.
Great to see you again, my friend. You just came back from a whirlwind trip in Australia.
Yes.
So share with the audience what this was about, because I think it's a fascinating, we tend to look in our own communities, but the issue of the brain affects everybody in the world.
Yes, I was down under speaking at a variety of different groups in relationship to the brain and also biblical principles for a healthy mind and integration of what we understand, how the brain works, and the Bible principles and how they work together.
In this concept of your approach, which has been in both the God-shaped brain and the God-shaped heart, and now in the aging brain, weaving in the faith component, God's infinite abilities to create us, how we can partner with God and His Word to live a richer, more fulfilling life, not only spiritually, but how that impacts our brains. I don't think we really have grasped the indelible connection between our relationship with God and brain health and physical health. Help us understand that better.
Well, God is the creator, meaning He built reality. He built space, time, energy, matter, human beings. He builds life. And He also has built or created the laws upon which all reality function. Law of gravity, laws of physics, laws of health, and so forth. And so when we come to really understand biblical principles, we're understanding how God designed reality to work. And as we understand that and work with God, we move in harmony with how life works best. And there's always better health when we do that. If you think of it on the physical level, as you move in harmony with the laws of health, you get healthier. If you break the laws of health, you have problems. Well, that's true on the mental, relational, spiritual level as well. There are principles upon which life are built. Neurobiologically, principles of beneficence, love, compassion have a very healthy effect on our brain, calming our stress and anxiety circuits and reducing inflammatory cascades in our body.
So we hear a lot of terms being kicked around on television: cortisol, testosterone, HGH. I mean, there's all kinds of terminology about chemistry that it's now being introduced. If you take this, you're going to stress-induced weight gain, and you're going to reverse this kind of thing. And so there's brain chemistry, which is related to our stress levels, related to our lifestyle, related to, and everybody has a pill and a potion for this, but your approach is much more holistic, much more spiritually centered. Although you are a certified psychopharmacologist, there are other things other than just pills.
Well, medicines will not fix a broken marriage. Medicines will not fix a guilty conscience. Medicines will not fix, many of the stressors in life. And so our brains are constantly adapting, changing based on our thinking patterns and life experiences. Medicines won't fix bad nutrition. There's so many things medicines don't fix. They simply can cause a change in mood experience or they can affect neurobiological signaling, but they're not going to fix so many of the problems in life. And your brain is in a state of flux. And if you have a pattern of thinking that's negative, pessimistic, depressogenic, self-critical, or critical of others, that creates patterns of brain firing, and your brain structure changes in a negative way over time. If you have healthy, holistic thinking, resolving problems, not Pollyannish thinking, but really dealing with life problems to bring true resolutions in godly ways, then your brain develops in a different way.
So how do we, first of all, there are those that are very reluctant to go see somebody and they want to find or dig for the answers. I think Google is kind of been the panacea for so many people, saying I can find my answer to everything just by Googling it, and if I follow this sounds good, I'm going to try this, and this sounds good, and I'm going to try that. But there are certain things that you're just not going to find until you dig into a deeper understanding of your relationship with God, God's design for your life, and how you are actually built to function in a certain way. And I think that in your God-shaped heart, God-shaped brain, and now in the aging brain, you kind of give us a real picture of how God created us to operate in perfect harmony with His plan. And what happens to us when we go in the natural, we go our own way.
Yep. So we're tripartite beings, body, soul, spirit. And the medicine's working on the body. And we can have physical problems from our body. Our bodies can have genetic problems, and we can have nutritional deficiencies or hormonal imbalances, or so there can be physical problems that cause us mental health problems, where medicines, if it's, for instance, attention deficit because of a gene problem that they don't signal dopamine properly, well, a medicine can help with that, compensate for that, because that's a physical problem of the body. However, we can have problems of the soul, problems of the thinking patterns, negative, pessimistic things. We have spiritual problems where we're under guilt and condemnation and so forth. And medicine's not going to help those things. You've got to resolve those things on the plane where the problem exists.
So what tools do I need to live what we might call, I'm 67 years old. I feel I live a very healthy, I have a good mindset, I study the Word, I make my living in the Word, but it's also my passion, it's what I derive my greatest joy from is a deeper understanding, and then taking people to a deeper understanding. So it's a very fulfilling, rewarding life, and keeps me, I think, young, vibrant, and sharp, and always searching and interacting. But there's a lot of people out there that like my father at 64, the day he retired, he had a heart attack. And he lost all vision for life. His entire life was defined by his work. And when he had no future plan and had to face the inevitability of a forced retirement based on his age, he literally fell over at his retirement and wound up having quadruple bypass surgery. Of course, his lifestyle led to that, but it was this almost this
mental stress,
stress-induced, and wound up being the next 20 years living out his life with stress-induced illnesses, from cancers to other heart diseases to finally dying of congestive heart failure at age 84, never having restored that zeal that he had for getting up and going to work every day. He lost all that, and that, I think, killed him.
No, you're exactly right. And what you've just described is mindset. And one of the things I describe in the Aging Brain book is how important our mindset is, because our body reacts to what our mindset is. Our beliefs, our attitudes determine which brain circuits fire. And if we have that mindset that you just described with your dad, that's a very stressful mindset. It tells our brain that we're under some type of threat in some way. So we activate our stress circuits, which kicks up the immune system, which kicks up inflammatory factors. It's very unhealthy for us to have that negative mindset. Even in things like exercise. Well, exercise is good for us, right? Well, I point out in the book, if you choose an exercise you enjoy. But if you are doing an exercise that you can't stand and you're slogging through it and you're going, I'm going to do it, but I hate it the whole time, that negative mindset actually undermines the physical benefits of the exercise, because you're activating your stress circuits and you're actually kicking up the negative body hormones that interfere with the benefits of the exercise. So the mindset is absolutely critical.
You know, the Word of God says is to hold every thought captive to the mind of Messiah. And so we know that God's plan for us is a good plan. We know that there are promises, but we also know that life has challenges. Does our mindset of defeatist, unworthy, shame, embarrassment, all those things that go into the negative side, how do they contribute to our overall sense of well-being and our brain health?
No, what you just described are actually very harmful mindsets. They actually undermine health, both mental health and physical health, both. People with chronic shame, chronic guilt. And we all have done things in this world where we have moments of that. But if we don't resolve it in a godly way and we live under chronic shame, chronic guilt, that activates, again, the amygdala in the brain, kicks up all types of inflammatory factors. We will have a shortened life. We will have greater likelihood of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, strokes, cancers. All these things go up when we live under chronic stress like that.
You know, it's interesting that my mother's 93, and her greatest attribute is her sense of humor.
Yes, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. Neurobiologically, we know that when you laugh, laughter causes the release of nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, and you have a lower blood pressure by 35%. When you laugh regularly, 35% reduction in blood pressure, whereas people who don't laugh actually have more stress and their blood pressure goes up. So yes, there's one factor that's healthy about laughter.
So in the aging brain, you kind of begin to focus in. We talked about the God-shaped brain, the God-shaped heart. Now God's created us, uniquely created us to have this ability to perceive and to connect with thought processes and patterns, the inclinations of our heart, our mindset, and all these things. But now we come to the point where we have a population which is getting older, and a large amount of the population is getting older. And at the big baby boomer generation, my generation, your generation, we're beginning to face Medicare. We're looking at now changing doctors from a doctor that doesn't deal with what they call quote-unquote geriatric practices, moving us to more in the area of somebody that can handle the problems with aging. What are the early signs, warning signs, and what's the average onset of, you talk about in your book, The Aging Brain, that there are preventable, preventable and reversible.
Yeah, so let's maybe define what dementia is for people. Dementia is the functional loss of memory plus one of four domains. Memory loss plus loss of normal language ability. Or memory loss with loss of normal motor ability, like you buttoning your shirts or tying your shoes. Or memory loss with the loss of the ability to recognize objects. You see a chair, but you don't recognize it as a chair. Or memory loss with the loss of executive function, ability to balance your checkbook, plan your meals, that type of thing. So if you have memory loss with one or more of those domain losses, that's the functional syndrome known as dementia. Anything that damages the brain can cause dementia. So vascular disease, where you're having little tiny strokes in your brain, can cause vascular dementia. Parkinson's disease can cause Parkinson's dementia. Lewy body disease, Lewy body dementia. And Alzheimer's disease, Alzheimer's dementia. They're all different diseases, different ways of damaging the brain. The number one cause of dementia is Alzheimer's dementia, the late onset Alzheimer's form. That's the biggest number. I'll give you an example. Out of 1,000 people over age 65, 67 will get Alzheimer's disease. Wow. Out of 1,000 people over 65, 9 will get Parkinson's disease. So you can see significantly higher Alzheimer's than Parkinson's, 6 times much more. So Alzheimer's is the big one. And the late onset Alzheimer's form, from what we know about it now, it's lifestyle related. It comes from lifestyle factors. Are there genetics involved? Yes, but the genetics seem to be only magnifying the damage of the lifestyle factors, not actually directly causing.
So when you talk about early onset of dementia, are we talking about early onset of Alzheimer's, early onset of Parkinson's, early onset?
No. I was talking late onset is the big one.
Okay, late onset.
Late onset. When you talk about Alzheimer's disease, there's 2 types. There's the early onset familial form. Familial runs in families. That's autosomal dominant, meaning it's a gene. There's 3 genes been identified that cause it, 3 different ones. If you get that gene, it causes it, and there's no known cure. And that occurs in the 40s or 50s. Okay. That's when people get it. That's about 5% of all Alzheimer's cases. 95% of all Alzheimer's cases are the late onset form that happen after age 65, and there is not a specific gene that causes it. There are genes that have been associated with it, but those genes, as I was saying, should best be understood at this point in time as simply magnifying the damage that the lifestyle factors are causing. But if you don't have those risk genes, you still can get Alzheimer's dementia from the same factors, but the people with the high-risk genes have the magnifying effect, so they can get it maybe more easily with less of those lifestyle factors.
So am I wrong to say that 67% plus the 9% means 76%?
That's not percent. 67 out of 1,000.
Oh, 67 out of 1,000. So 6%. Okay, 6.7%, not 67. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
that's over 65. Over 85, it's 1 in 3. 1 in 3. 33% of people over 85 have Alzheimer's dementia.
Okay, which is very high.
Yes, okay. That's because it's lifestyle related. Now, do we want to explain what the underlying process is? What's most likely happening, what the science is showing, is that in the brain, insulin resistance is happening, just like the insulin resistance in the body for adult onset diabetes. What drives insulin resistance are factors that increase inflammation in our body. Unhealthy diet, lack of exercise, chronic stress, these types of things drive insulin resistance. Insulin resistance in the brain causes a cascade of factors. I can walk you through the factors, but ultimately resulting in loss of neurons in the brain and Alzheimer's dementia. And so anything that we do that would reverse that type of insulin resistance will prevent the development of the Alzheimer's dementia.
So what are some of those things that we can do?
Well, first, a very healthy diet. The 2 diets that have been shown to actually correlate with better brain volume, less dementia, and better memory and cognition are either the Mediterranean diet, high in fish oils and low in highly processed foods, and or the whole food vegan diet, the plant-based, fruits, nuts, grains, vegetables. Those 2 diets are the 2 diets that are associated with good outcomes. The diets associated with bad outcomes are the fast food, junk food, high sugar, highly processed food diet, the typical American diet. And the reason is because the unhealthy foods cause inflammation in your body and drive insulin resistance. It's not simply that they're missing nutrients. They are actually highly inflammatory, the foods themselves.
So this is the fried foods, the processed foods, the high nitrate,
and high sugars.
And high sugars.
So there are, in the cooking processes with high heat, like frying, searing, those types of things, the cooking process creates new molecules that are not there in the food itself originally, just by the searing or the frying, and those molecules are highly oxidizing in our body. Our body can make those same types of molecules if we have high sugars. And the high sugars the sugars will bind in our body, making these types of molecules that are highly oxidizing too. So that's why the high sugar diet can contribute as well.
So when we take a look at the lipid panels of cholesterol, triglycerides, those kind of things which clog the arteries, which fill the arteries and the carotid artery especially. These are the things that we can directly attribute to diet and look at food groups which will contribute to a much more balanced. There was a time in my life when I was on all kinds of medications for triglycerides and things like that, and found that if I cut sugar out, that went away. All my numbers returned to complete normal. And then I found that in order for me to really make sure that there were certain things, I take niacin in the morning and at night just to help that process along, which is a natural occurring. And I'm like you, I'm a fresh caught salmon and raw tuna eater.
Which are high in omega-3 fatty acids, which are very anti-inflammatory.
And I'm not a big cooked food person. I've never been.
And that's very healthy, because the more raw the food, the more life, if you can put it that way. These are living foods still. You have the fresh fruits and things, whereas the more boxed it is, the more dead the food is, if you follow what I'm saying.
So at one point I somehow convinced myself that oranges and apples and strawberries and all these berries are high in sugar, and therefore you're going to just gain a lot of weight. When I finally got out of that mindset and said, the more of those that I eat, the better off I am, the more I'm replacing other foods with these foods. And so heavy fruit, heavy vegetable, and more of the Mediterranean.
No, that's really right, because those fruits, berries in particular, but all those things with colors in them, those phytochemicals are highly antioxidant and anti-inflammatory, and really reduce and slow the aging process and help protect your brain. So that's exactly correct.
Now, is it food plus exercise? Because I have to be very, very candid. I'm not an exercise person. I'm kind of. I kind of hide behind the proverb that says only the wicked run when no one is chasing them. And so and
taking that a little bit out of context, but
right.
But I like it. So three big things, that the three big ones are, and you're doing two out of the three. The healthy diet, big one. Exercise, and I'll explain the reason why in a minute. And the third one is stress management. And because you have a healthy spirituality, clear conscience, you're beneficent, you're altruistic, you have a ministry where you care and give to other people, that neurobiologically activates love circuits, which calms fear circuits. Very healthy. So the stress management piece is huge. But the exercise piece is huge too, because when we exercise regularly, and it can be nothing more than walking, brisk walking 5 times a week, can be sufficient. People who do that have lower rates of Alzheimer's disease than people who don't. So when we exercise regularly, the muscles produce anti-inflammatory factors, the neurotrophins, proteins in the brain that cause the brain to sprout new connections, turns on. We get better vascularization into our brain. We get better insulin sensitivity. So we reverse the insulin resistance. So we reverse the process of inflammation that's causing the cascade of destructive events in the brain. So a lot of healthy things from exercising.
Very good. We're talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, author of The God-Shaped Brain, author of The God-Shaped Heart, and his latest book, The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Mind. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to hear more about God's plan and how that perfectly fits together with what your desires are for becoming healthy, brain healthy, that you have this desire to live a life of the latter years with dignity. That's the common answer, is what do you do? I want to live my life out with dignity. And how do you define that? I want to be able to take care of myself. I want to have a sound mind. God gave you a sound mind. And Dr. Jennings is here to talk to us about how when we align with God's plan for our mind, that we can prevent and even reverse some of the negative impact things that have occurred in our life, so that we don't have to become statistic when it comes to the aging brain. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Not everything that makes the headlines has biblical importance, but many events that happen around the world do, and you never hear about them. Igniting a Nation is pleased to teach Revealing Prophecy every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at the Marriott 280 in Birmingham. We will cover worldwide events and insider information that will connect the dots of what's happening around the world with biblical prophecy. If you happen to miss a class, we'll televise each week's class at 10 o'clock Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our social media outlets. Copies of the teachings will also be available to purchase on our website at www.ignitinganation.com. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English, and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker. We're talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, author of the newly released book, The Aging Brain. Dr. Jennings, welcome back to the program.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So we've talked about physical exercise as being a great stimulus for keeping a healthy brain, good brain chemistry, insulin, cutting down on insulin dependence or insulin resistance, this type 2 onset, older onset of diabetes that seems to be related to weight, to lifestyle, of being sedentary, and food, all contributing factors. You can be a vegetarian and be sedentary and probably not get type 2 diabetes. But if you're eating the American diet, which is fast food, which I don't eat any fast food at all, none of it. Just a couple of years ago, I just lost all taste for it. Something happened where it just wanted nothing to do with it.
You were blessed, evidently.
I was blessed, but I still have a sweet tooth, so I've had to navigate this new coconut milk and new kind of non-dairy, because I'm a non-dairy person.
I use almond milk myself.
Okay, so I didn't grow up drinking milk.
Yeah, me either.
Ever. There was never milk in our home.
No, I agree with you. I didn't either.
Yeah, so it was an Eastern European thing. It was just, you know, they subscribed to the fact that when you're weaned, you're weaned.
Yep, I agree with them.
You know, and you're not going to drink some other animal's milk.
Right.
So we had cereal, but we ate it out of the box.
Okay.
You know, we weren't deprived
We had
of
soy milk. We actually had soy milk as a kid.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. So we've looked at physical activities, diet and lifestyle, mental activities, the television, technology, iPhones, chronic television watching. What does that do to the brain?
So there are a couple different good questions you've asked here. Television watching of a theatrical nature. This is entertainment television, movies and your dramas and things like that. Accelerate aging, accelerate dementia. They activate stress circuits. They suspend activity in the higher critical reasoning areas. So there's nothing healthy about these dramas and theatrical programming. Educational television, though, is not harmful because it's stimulating you to reason and think, and that's the difference. There's a design law involved here. It's called the law of exertion. If you want something to get stronger, you must exercise it, because if you don't use it, you lose it. That's not just physical. If you want strong math ability, you've got to work problems. You want strong musical skill, you've got to practice your instrument. And so if you watch a lot of theatrical programming, you're exercising emotion circuits, but you're not exercising thinking circuits, and therefore emotion circuits is stronger and stronger, and your ability to process and think gets weaker and weaker. If you do a lot of that. If you do a lot of educational things, though, then your critical reasoning skills get stronger. And so theatrical television, not good. Additionally, with a lot of TV watching often comes sedentary lifestyle and junk food eating. So there's a kind of trifecta of bad things happening there. With mental exercise, though, you're exactly right. The data shows with mental exercise, and what kind of mental exercises are beneficial? New learning. Actually learning something you don't currently know. So studying to expand your comprehension, your insight, your awareness, your perspective, new information learning, new memorization. New learning activates genes in your brain that produces proteins that create new connections and new pathways. But repetitive reinforcement doesn't do that. So for instance, Bible study. If you do Bible study because God is infinite and there's an infinite amount of truth in the Bible.
Right.
So you're studying to grow your knowledge of God and to grow in your understanding of His kingdom, and you're learning new things in your study. That's very beneficial. But many people study the Bible simply to reinforce something they learned as a 6-year-old. And if you're studying just to reinforce stuff you've known your whole life, that actually has no benefit.
You know, it's very interesting. Now, you know, I grew up in a Jewish home and was a part of the Jewish community for 44 years before I came to faith in Jesus. So I guess I had the later in life aha moment and came to faith, and so I have spent 23 years doing a deep dive into connecting the New Testament, which was brand new thinking for me, with the Old Testament, which was childhood building and expanding and then connecting the dots and looking at the matrix of the Bible almost as a prism investigation, and surrounding myself, and I surround myself, my peer group are all PhDs.
But wasn't that exciting? I bet you had a lot of aha moments. Oh.
Yeah, actually every day and in every interview. So being a talk show host and being able to interview people who are introducing new content and new perspectives on the same words. Like the Bible never changes. Okay, the pages of the Bible never change. The words are the same. Genesis 1 is Genesis 1 is Genesis 1. But there are things that come alive, and there's things that are connected. And I had a dialogue yesterday with a pastor who was talking about the Pharisees, and then he asked me the question. He said, what's the origin of it? And I said, well, actually, it all began with Jethro, the Midianite, when he was talking to Moses, saying, look, what you're doing is not healthy. What you're doing is too much. It's too much of a burden for one man himself to try to manage all 600,000 men having problems and coming to them all day. So I want you to set up the structure of tens, hundreds, thousands, and dividing this, and almost like our Supreme Courts, the court system is all built on that, and that's where this whole system for the Sanhedrin and the whole organizational structure came from. And he wrote me back and he said, never once would have it ever occurred to me to connect this encounter with Moses' father-in-law with something that is in existence today and will play a part in the return of Messiah. And he's going to Israel with me. I take a group to Israel 2 weeks out of every year so that I can connect the dots for planning this excitement. This is the benevolent, yes, I've been there 16 times, and yes, I do this every year, but it's always new for me because I get to get the new questions and the questions that I've never been asked before in this environment and people, and so you get to learn with them and challenge with them and pursue and dig deeper, and I think it's one of the great blessings in my life is that I'm surrounded by, we have now 20 regular featured guests like yourself that are all PhDs. And so they challenge me and I get to challenge them and we get to run these ideas past each other. So, but what about scripture memorization?
So that law of exertion. If you exercise your memory circuits, then your memory circuits, you'll get better and better at memorization. So yes, memorization of Bible scripture or memorization of anything, but I think there's a special blessing personally in memorizing scripture. If you go a little bit beyond it, just simply memorization. I remember the story of a savant who memorized the entire Bible, right. And you could ask them and they could tell it, but they had no idea what any of it meant. So I think more than memorization is great as long as you connect it to the growing in the meaning of the word.
Dr. Jennings, let's get to a very delicate topic, and that delicate topic is that you begin to see a family member that's exhibiting some memory loss and one of those 4 functional areas, and you're noticing it and they're not. And it's time to have a conversation. It's time to approach this because if we get to that point, is it reversible or is it inevitable?
So the data shows, if we're talking the late onset Alzheimer's type, that mild cognitive changes that are noticeable, but you haven't yet crossed the line to be fully demented. There's no dementia, but there are mild cognitive changes that are measurable and noticeable, that if you implement the lifestyle changes of diet, exercise, bringing in the anti-inflammatory healthy things, stress management. If you do that and do it aggressively, that you can actually prevent moving into dementia. You can stop the process. Because the process is driven by insulin resistance in the brain, where the brain cannot clear certain toxins out of the brain anymore. And when you do this healthy lifestyle, insulin resistance goes away and you start clearing these things out of the brain and you stop the pathological process that causes these things. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense, and I think it should be encouraging to people to have these dialogues early. As a medical professional, as one who has a practice, and I'm sure people come to you and say, listen, my mom or my husband or my wife, or there's some changes going on. Do you do an intervention? How do you approach this delicately to really introduce them into are people able to perceive if they're told?
So with one of the sad things about Alzheimer's dementia, in the very early stages, people can have, and this is really the mild cognitive stage, not the dementia stage. So they're not actually demented. They've just had some mild losses. Those individuals can have awareness and realize what's happening, and therefore having the conversation with them and offering them, for instance, what's in my book, which will show them the lifestyle change they need to make, can offer them hope that they can stop it. But some people are not willing to make those changes. They're not willing to give up their, pork rinds or whatever it is that they're munching on every day. They're just not willing to exercise, or they're not willing to stop the whatever it is that is in their life driving this inflammatory cascade, even though it's happening. Like the smoker with lung disease who doesn't want to quit smoking, even though the lungs, or the alcoholic with liver disease. Some people, even though they're aware that their brain is failing now, they don't want to make the lifestyle changes. Some others, though, will. And so, and I've seen both types of individuals, and I've seen some that make those changes and they just don't progress on to dementia.
So is there a way to frame the discussion? Have you found that there's any kind of methodology to approaching a loved one and making them aware of it and helping guide them to either go on a visit with them to their doctor to talk about some things?
Yeah, it's very difficult. And one of the principles I was taught in school was that it comes from the metaphor of golf. You got to play the ball where it lies. And people are at different positions and different and have different vulnerabilities and different biases, and so there's not one magic approach to everybody, but you can anticipate some common themes. Most people will be defensive. Most people will want to deny. Most people will also be afraid of losing their individuality, afraid of losing their autonomy, afraid of losing their independence, and so they'll want to deny, afraid of losing lots of things, okay? And so because of that, you can anticipate, and so anything that you can approach and suggest that your concern for them is maintaining their maximum autonomy, ability, and functioning, and that you want to help them do that, rather than it's time to take the car keys and lock you away in the house till you die.
So is there, because of the aging population and because there are more, I think statistically, more people living alone than in prior generations. I live by myself. I have a dog. It's my dog and myself. Are we finding that people are not able to get the help, that the community is not, there's just no one to approach them. The families doesn't interact the way they used to. Everybody's spread apart, so there's people that are falling through the crack until it's really just too late.
I don't know about falling through the crack, but what you brought up is quite right, that because of the way America has gone, where we don't have the families all living close together, we have families living all over the country, that it is quite common that the children of the older parent who are living outside the country are unaware of the decline. Because with the late onset Alzheimer's dementia, if you're not really around them, you can miss it because they sound reasonable. For instance, daughter lives in Oregon and calls up mom who's in Tennessee and says, "Hey, mom, how you doing?" "Oh, pretty good. What you been up to?" "Oh, the usual. What'd you have for dinner?" "Just my regular stuff." And what you'll find, they're interactive, they're cordial, they're polite, they're telling you everything's fine. But if you're listening carefully, they never really have a lot of substance to say anymore. There are these very generalizations that sound like normal conversation, but if you ask them for specifics, they are often impaired in their ability to give them. But you don't necessarily pick that up on a phone call. So a lot of times when you live outside the country, people do miss the signs of things declining.
It's quite interesting. I left home at 14, and so for 53 years I've spoken to my mother at the same time on Sunday, every Sunday, the same way my father did when his mother was no longer living with us. Kind of a pattern in the family, and there was a week that I tried to call her, she didn't answer, I left her a message, she didn't call me back, and when I spoke to her the next week, she said, weren't you concerned? And I said, no, I was not concerned. She said, this is the first week that I even talked to one of them in Israel. First week that's really transpired in all these years that we didn't connect. I said, I just figured you were busy, and I didn't get a call from the funeral home. And she said to me, you have their number? And I said, yes. And she said, so because nobody called you, there was no 911, there was nobody contacted you from either the funeral home or a doctor, you weren't concerned about your mother. I said, look, you tell me you have this boyfriend, all right? You're out every night, you're going to the theater, you're going bowling, you're doing these things. I said, we're now in a new season where you've got somebody, you're actually publicly, now everybody knows she's seeing somebody. Now that this is public, then kind of some of the responsibility for the day-to-day checking on you kind of falls into his lap. If he's going to be your boyfriend, then tell him to step it up. At 90 years old, he better keep his eye on you. And so this Sunday, she put him on the phone with me, and she said, tell him what you told me. And I said, all right, you're now the one to keep your eye on her. If you see something that's troubling, you now have my number, you call me. But if I don't hear from her for a week, I'm going to expect that she's in good hands, and I'm not going to be concerned about her. So we laughed about it because at 93, her body is changing, but her mind is just as sharp as it can possibly be. Her father lived to 94 and was sharp until his last breath. So fortunately, I don't think that we have the gene. There's been no incidents in any of the family members that were genetically Alzheimer's, so I'm thankful for that. But we do talk about it. We've joked before. She said, you're just waiting for the first sign so you can put me away and grab medical power of attorney and take over. I said, I don't want your things. I'm 67 myself. I'm a senior citizen. I've already lived my life, established myself and lived my life. We're not concerned.
You mentioned genes just now. Let's talk to our audience about that, because when it looks at the late onset Alzheimer's dementia, genetics are not sufficient. There are genes associated, but one of the genes associated, 2/3 of the people with Alzheimer's have that, but 1/3 don't. And so the genes are not directly causal. They're just increasing risk. It's really the lifestyle factors. So it's very clear you don't have the genes for it, but you also in your family have had a healthier lifestyle than most, right. And that's the combination. And so even people with the high-risk genes, so it's a gene called an ApoE gene. If you have 2 copies of it, increases your risk of Alzheimer's dementia 66%. But a study at the University of Washington found that people who had 2 copies of that gene did not have a progression to Alzheimer's dementia or the brain signs of it if they had a history of exercise. So one lifestyle factor that in that study, which was exercise, just kind of completely prevented the development of the dementia and the risks that you got from the bad genes.
In your psychopharmacological practice and your connection with the drug companies, drug research being done around the world, especially in Israel and some countries which have a very cutting-edge medical community. How much research and how much is being done in this brain health area as opposed to the cancers and the lung disease?
I don't have any direct comparison on how much is being spent in the different groups, but I can tell you billions of dollars of research are being spent on brain science and brain health. But there will be no cure for Alzheimer's dementia. There will be preventative interventions like I've described in my book. The only way to deal with Alzheimer's dementia is to never get it, because once you have it, that brain has already lost billions of neurons. They're gone. Okay, and so there's not going to be an intervention that comes along, give you an injection, and suddenly, 20 billion neurons regrow and all those networks that's not going to happen. And so the only way to really deal with late onset Alzheimer's dementia is to never get it in the first place. And the way you don't get it is by having that healthy lifestyle all along, and then you won't get it.
I think we had a conversation a couple months ago about this reminder I have that says it's time to stand. Stand up and move a little for 1 minute out of every hour. It reminds me, and we talked about a little something about the elongation of
Telomeres.
Okay.
Telomeres, the end caps on your chromosomes, and they have to be a certain length in order for your cells to divide and replace old dying cells. And if they get too short, they can't. And the shortness of the telomeres is associated with aging. In fact, they can predict remaining lifespan by the length of your telomeres. 80% of your telomere length is heritable. In other words, genetically determined by your inheritance. But 20% is related to lifestyle. Things that shorten the telomeres and accelerate aging are chronic relationship conflicts, violence, growing up in an orphanage, war, conflict, that kind of stuff will accelerate the telomere shortening and accelerate aging. Things that will lengthen telomeres are exercise and a plant-based diet, like with a lot of beta carotene and things like that in it. And so, and then of course, healthy relationships prevent the shortening. Does that make sense?
It does. So, to kind of to summate our conversation today, that if you're already in the dynamics of Alzheimer's, that there is no cure, but if you are not exhibiting early onset or any signs of dementia, that there are things, lifestyle changes that you can make that will delay or even possibly stop that process in its tracks, and that is, those are lifestyle changes based on the food we eat, which should be more plant-based, which should be more living foods, I think is a great example. Those things that grow out of the ground, grow on a tree, those things that are grown, or those things that are animal, fish especially, the ones higher in omega-3 fatty acids. Specifically, you and I have talked in the past about wild-caught, not farm-raised salmon and tuna, and trying to get the best grade, sashimi grade tuna, ahi tuna, ahi grade tuna, and vegetables. Exercise, and then the stimulation of the brain by learning new things, taking on new hobbies, taking on new learning experiences, watching, not saying don't watch television, but watch things that challenge the brain.
Can I mention two more quick things?
Absolutely.
And that is rest, two types of rest. Sleep, 7 to 8 hours a night, is important for the physical rest for your body and for your brain to memory consolidation and get rid of waste products happen. So people who are chronically sleep deprived have more risk of dementia. And Sabbath rest. Sabbath rest is for the mind to decompress, to take the burdens and the work and the stress and put it aside and enter that space and that sanctuary and time each week with your Lord to just be at peace inside and experience God's love. Very healing, and both are associated with longer life and less dementia.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, because I'm a Sabbath observer and still have been all my life. Shomer Shabbat, I don't work on the Sabbath, and that is a time when I spend with the Lord and time in refreshment. So I appreciate all that. We've been talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, author of The Aging Brain. You can find more at www.agingbrainbook.com or his ministry website, comeandreason.com. Have Dr. Jennings come to speak to your group. Get his book and look at your lifestyle choices, because your lifestyle choices can bring on long-term changes so that you can live out a full and rich life, the life that God has designed for you. You look at the people in the Bible that are 100, 120, 160 that live full, rich lives. It's because they were eating a plant-based diet. They were eating not fried foods. They weren't watching television. They were up active every day of their life, not just laying around as a couch potato. Dr. Jennings, always great to see you, my friend. Always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me.
God bless you. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.